Nutty Sports Gamer here. Welcome to another episode of the 40-Year Sim. It has been a while, but it's time to get into the off-season before the 1999-2000 season. Listen, if you are new to this series, in the description there is a link to a Google document that shows you everything that's happened in the last 16 years. This sim started out in 1984. And now it's the year 2000. We're approaching the year 2000. So that's exciting. Check out that link if you want to get all caught up. But let's get into the draft. 1999 draft. The Nets had the number one pick. And they picked Shawn Marion at a UNLV, pairing up with Steve Nash. Steve Nash is the point guard for the Nets. And now they get Shawn Marion. That's a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing them on the court together. And then the Jazz with number 2 pick Steve Francis. That's going to be their point guard of the future. Stevie Franchise. He's going to be their franchise point guard. So that's exciting. Detroit Pistons select Baron Davis. So another point guard gets off the board and goes to Detroit. This time Baron Davis, he's going to be playing with Kevin Garnett in Detroit. So that's a lot of we'll see how that works. See what works out for them. Elton Brand is going to the Vancouver Grizzlies. They are building up a pretty nice squad there in Vancouver. Too bad they're moving to Memphis. Ron Artest, a.k.a. Meta World Peace, is a Minnesota Timberwolf. I got to say that's a really, really solid pick for the Wolves. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that looks. Lamar Odom going to the Celtics. Lamar Odom to the Celtics. Very interesting development there. That should be a lot of fun. Atlanta Magic select Andre Kirilenko. It's really hard to select a bad player in this draft. Manu Ginobili goes to the Bucks. I mean, come on. Corey Maggette to the Sixers. Another solid pickup. Rip Hamilton going to the Blazers. Keep it coming. Jason Terry to the Raptors. This draft is so freaking deep. I swear to God. Birdman going to the Blazers. I think he gets traded, but he's in the Blazers for now. Andre Miller to the 76ers. So they had Corey Maggette and Andre Miller. That's pretty cool. Calvin Booth to the Clippers. I think that's finally the first miss of the draft. Jonathan Mender to the Pacers. Guy Rucker to the Hawks. I know there's some other gems in this draft. Wally Zerbiak going to the Clippers. And then we got the Sonics with the 18th pick selecting Raja Bell. I don't think he stays with the Sonics, but fun to have him in the mix. Then we got Deion Glover going to the Suns. Kings select Eddie Robinson. The Wizards select Wang ZZ. Michael Ruffin goes to the Nuggets. Vonteku Cummings to the Wizards. Anybody else? Pablo Prigioni. Going to be fun to see if he has an interesting career in this sim. As we all know, or if some of you might know, he didn't really play in the NBA until the 2010s. Anybody else? Jorge Garbajosa. Trajan Langdon. Okay. I feel like there's a few more gems in this draft. Am I wrong? Harold Jameson. Maybe I'm wrong. I think we're done, guys. That might be all she wrote. But hey, those first 10, James Posey, there you go. There's another guy. Those first 10 or so picks, I mean, you could not miss. The Wolves got Ron Artest. The Magic got Andre Kirilenko. I mean, it just kept on coming. Devin George to the Hornets. Devin George is a guy. So, yeah. A couple of gems in round 2. I think that's it, though. I think we're good to go. Tom McCulloch, I recognize that name. I don't remember much about him, but I know that name. So that is it for the draft. We will check out the individual rosters shortly. But first off, I just want to note these are the free agents. Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Shaq, although he resigned to the Lakers, I'll just tell you that right now. But very interesting free agency this year. I will show you how it all shakes out as we get into all the rosters. I recorded the following section a couple of days ago, so I hope you enjoy that and the rest of the episode. So take it away, Nutty Sports Gamer, from a few days ago. So we're going to look at all the rosters before the 2000 season. We're going to skip the transactions page because I messed up the moratorium period of free agency, and so I had to do a lot of fixing through trades. So it's kind of a mess in there. But we will look at rosters. I also want to look at how all these teams did. Just look back at what they did over the last decade. 90s focused. First up, the 76ers made the playoffs last year, 52 wins, and they made the conference finals. Nick Van Exel, Eddie Jones, Glenn Robinson, Danny Manning, Marcus Camby, and then coming off the bench, you got Avery Johnson, Purvis Ellison, Gerard King, Corey Maggette, Ron Mercer, Adonal Foyle, Andre Miller, Cedric Henderson, Tom McCulloch. So there's a interesting mix of veterans, and then we got some younger players like Corey Maggette, Foyle, and Andre Miller. The Sixers are very interesting. They're a very good team. They should be poised to make another deep run in the playoffs. But the East is much tougher than it has been in the past, and so that's going to be a challenge. But I think they're up for it. Looking back, it's been a while, right? So 1991. So they were 50 and 32 in the 1990 season, and then I think they made the playoffs here, 91. After that, it was several seasons of a rebuild that eventually saw them get back into playoff prominence. But they were 500 in 97, then they won 38 games in 98. Finally broke through after trading Vin Baker and getting Eddie Jones. Finally broke through and won 52 games last season. Moving on to the Bucks, checking out the Bucks in the 90s. Very interesting roller coaster ride here, right? So they're moving on from the Sidney Moncrief era of the 80s, going on this rebuild. And can you tell where they drafted Shaq? Right about here. Saw a 25 game win bump in the 93 season. And they drafted Penny Hardaway the year after that. So all of a sudden, they're winning 55 games, 57, 64, 59, 59, and then finally Shaq leaves, and they have a 31 season, and they missed the playoffs. But this was a wild ride. This 6 year period was definitely a wild ride for the Bucks. Made the conference finals a few times, but could not get past the Bulls, and eventually Shaq wanted out. But now they have a new era. The Dirk and Penny era is what we have right here. So Penny Hardaway is still here. He's one of the best players in the league, the best point guard in the league at this point. No injuries, right? He's fully healthy, so he's absolutely tearing it up. Then you got Mitch Richmond, who they signed in free agency. They decided to get a veteran in there, and Mitch to help this team get back into playoff prominence. And you got Tony Kukoc at small forward. Dirk Nowitzki now is the starter at power forward. Isaac Austin coming back as the starting center. And then you got Katina Mobley as your sixth man. Oliver Miller, who they got from the Lakers. They stole from the Lakers. Andrew Kennedy still kicking it. Anthony Bonner, Shandon Anderson, Steven Jackson, who I eventually see as being the successor to Tony Kukoc. I eventually see Steven Jackson filling those shoes, just not quite yet. And of course, Manu Ginobili is right here. I want to at least try with Dirk and Penny. Really give it a shot before I decide. You know what? Penny needs to move on. We're going from Bucks to Wizards. The Wizards going to be very interesting this year. Well, actually, the interesting part is the fact that they're completely in a rebuild right now. The actual on-court product probably won't be interesting, but you look back at what they've done. Let's go back to when John Stockton was drafted, right? So John Stockton was drafted in the 84 offseason. Going into the 85 season, they win 15 games. And then in John Stockton's second year, boom, 62 wins, 63 wins. I think they made the conference finals somewhere here. And then 53, 61, 52. Going into the 90s, 50 wins again. And they trade for Len Bias at some point around here. 55 wins, 58 wins. They make the conference finals 3 years in a row right here. They made the finals in '94 and lost in 7 games to the Rockets. So this was their peak. This was the peak Bullets basketball right here with Len Bias, Reggie Lewis, and John Stockton. They still had some pretty good seasons after that, but Stockton's retired. Stockton has retired, and it's kind of started an avalanche. As you can see here, this is their roster for this year. Chris Smith, Malik Sealy, Kenny Green, John Williams, Vitaly Potapenko, Tom Gugliotta's on the team. You got Damon Jones, Yinka Dare, George Murasan, Piakowski, Samaki Walker, Tim Thomas, Ricky Davis, Jonathan Bender. I want to see Tim Thomas and Ricky Davis eventually see the court. You know, this is clearly a tanking team. I want to see some of these younger players actually get serious minutes, and eventually some of these vets probably get pawned off to somebody else. But are they going to toil in mediocrity in the post John Stockton era? It's going to be interesting to see if that indeed is the case. It might be, but maybe they're able to struck some lottery luck. Maybe they're able to get some lottery luck. So we'll see with the Wizards. Chicago Bulls, they're in the same boat. Let's check out the 90s for the Bulls. That's where things really picked up for them. They won 53 games in the 90 season, and then they started making the finals here. Lost to the Lakers, got swept, right? And then they beat the Phoenix Suns 92 and 93, both years in a row. Lost to the Bullets in the 94 playoffs, second round. And then all of a sudden, they win the finals here, 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 here. And then they lose to the finals. They lose to the Lakers in the finals 1999. And now, where are we at? Where are we at with the Bulls this year? Well, everyone's gone. Everyone that was on that Bulls team, except for Chuck Person. Chuck Person is sticking around. But you got Muggsy Bogues, Derek Anderson, Roy Marble with an inflated 89 overall. Never really. He was on the Rockets for a number of years. Never really believed it. And there really isn't a place for him in any other team. So I figure, you know what? Let's let Roy Marble go crazy on this tanking Bulls team. Why not? He's 32. He doesn't have that many years left anyway. So we'll let him do his thing here. Alan Henderson never really popped off in this league or in the real life, so he's here. Bison Deli. You got Chuck Person coming off the bench. Bryant Reeves. You got Brian Skinner, Lamont Murray, Troy Hudson, John Wallace, Fred Hoiberg. But didn't he coach the Bulls in real life? I'm pretty sure he did. Tariq Abdul-Wahad. Jermaine Jackson, Anthony Johnson. So, yeah, this is going to be a pretty bad team. When we get into the actual games, we'll see a little bit of Bulls and Wizards and probably the opening weekend episode, and then that'll probably be it. I mean, these teams aren't going to be worth watching. And you got the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers, are they starting to rebuild? No. They have new jerseys. They might have a new court as well. I'm going to check after we look at these rosters and what they did in the 90s. So you got Kevin Johnson's back, Reggie Miller, Dennis Scott. LaFonso Ellis is now their starting power forward. You got Dale Davis back at center. Eldon Campbell, who I believe Eldon Campbell, yep, he was on the Cavaliers for a couple of seasons, so he's back. And then you got Chris Gatling still here, Matt Maloney, Hubert Davis, Sarunas Marshall-Lonis coming off the bench. Chris Anderson, Birdman is here. He was drafted by somebody else, but he ended up coming to the Cavaliers in a trade. Michael Dickerson, Anthony Carter, Milt Palacio. So that is the squad. And if we look at what they did in the 90s, yeah, they were like on the verge of making the playoffs for a couple of seasons here, and then made it in 92. Then they fell off a little bit. Then they bounced back in 95. They got more consistent starting in the 95 season. 46 wins, 54 wins, 42, 50, 44. So yeah, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, they made the playoffs the last 5 years in a row. I think they made it in 97, right? I think they were the 8th seed in 97. But yeah, and they should do much better than 44 wins this season, I would hope. Let's check to see if they have a new court. I don't remember if that is the case. I think it does look a little bit different, right? This court looks a little bit different than last season. So yeah, this is a new court. I'm pretty sure this is a new court than last year. Hopefully, I remember last year's core being really foggy for some reason, for some strange reason. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen this season. So Celtics last playoff appearance 1992. But you know what? As we check out the 90s for the Celtics was a decade to forget, wasn't it? So they won 53 games here, 48, 44, and then Larry Bird and McHale refused to retire in this period right here, and they were just struggling. They were bad. And then after Bird and McHale retired, more badness. They did draft Ray Allen. They managed to get Paul Pierce. So they had the squad is getting interesting. Things are definitely getting interesting in Boston. Let's check out this roster. Why don't we do that right now? They got Kenny Anderson starting at um, point guard. They got Ray Allen. They got Paul Pierce. They got Brian Grant, who they got from Orlando, and Luke Longley from free agency. So not a bad starting five. This is probably the best starting five they've had in a while. The lowest rated guy here is Paul Pierce, who's a future All-Star, right? And then you got D. Brown coming off the bench. You got Derek Chivas, Donald Royal, Greg Ostertag, Rafer Alston, Dwayne Shinsius, Sean Green, Lamar Odom. Lamar Odom, I think he primarily plays power forward, right? I could see him eventually becoming the starting power forward down the line. You know, I like Lamar Odom as maybe being a long-term piece for this team, which is funny because he played for the Lakers in the late 2000s, and you know the situation there. But it's kind of fun to have him on this team. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but they're definitely sniffing it. They're sniffing the playoffs. You know, the 2001-2002 season, I think that's where we'll really start to see this team really come into their own. This year, I feel like is a key building block year for them to get to the point of making the playoffs on a regular basis and maybe becoming a finals caliber team, right? A championship caliber team. I think NBA 2K also updated this court. Let's take a look at this. Yeah, now it says Boston Celtics. I think it said TD Garden. Uh, I had to use the court that I found with thanks to the 2K community, but now 2K has updated the court and now it looks like this. So, you know, it doesn't look that much different, but it is different. So I wanted to point it out. And let us move on to the Clippers, who also have a new court, new jerseys, because they are going to the Staples Center starting the season, their home games. So let's check this out. They made the playoffs last year, 41-41. Generally speaking, we'll check out the roster in a second. Generally speaking, they've been, 90s weren't too great for the Clippers. They won 43 games in the 90 season, but they missed the playoffs all throughout this period here. And then I think they made the playoffs in 95, I want to say, as the 8 seed, and then missed playoffs more around here. Then finally they made it in 99 with 41 wins. But this team, I mean, come on. This team should be way better than that. Terrell Brandon still here, Jim Jackson, Peja Stojakovic, Chris Webber, Vlade Divac, Dana Barros off the bench, Billy Owens, Felton Spencer, Larry Hughes, Loy Vaught, Calvin Booth, Wally Zerbiak, Tyrone Lue, Roderick Rhodes. I expect big things from this team this season. And if they are underwhelming by the trade deadline, I think some changes will need to be made. I like Peja, Weber, and Vlade. I think these guys, obviously, in real life, they're on those Kings teams that did a lot of damage, almost made the finals once, right? But yeah, I like them here. And then I feel like if this team is disappointing, we got to fix something here. So let's check out the court. So yeah, this is the Clippers on the Staples Center, in the Staples Center arena. Very nice. It's been they were in the other court for a long time. Nice to see the Clippers moving to the Staples Center. We will see the Lakers court in a little bit. But this is what the Clippers court looks like. If we check out the 90s for the Hawks, they had a bit of a up and down decade for sure. They made it they won 60 games in the 90 season, right, with Ralph Sampson and Dominique Wilkins and Orlando Blackman, but they lost in the first round in an embarrassing fashion. And then in '91 season, they made it to the conference finals, lost to the Bulls. And then after that, Ralph Sampson started to fall off a little bit. Uh, the team in general started to fall off. So they kind of went back into just barely making the playoffs for a couple of seasons, and then finally decided to move forward with a rebuild, which saw them get Allen Iverson and then Tim Duncan, and lo and behold, they won 44 games last year. Gave the Bulls a tough test in round one, and I think they should take that next leap this year into becoming a finals contender. You got Chauncey Billups. Oh, they got New Jersey, by the way, and a new court. Oh, we'll check out their court in a second. Chauncey Billups, Allen Iverson, Bonzi Wells, Tim Duncan, Dino Raja, Willie Burton coming off the bench, Darrell Armstrong, Steve Kerr. They got Steve Kerr from the Bulls. But yeah, you get that Della Shrimp coming off the bench. That's fun. You got Willie Burton. Let's check out their court. So they got the red now. I think last year was black court or black trimming, right? The border was black. I don't remember if the free throw, the paint was black as well. But yeah, new court, new jerseys, and this team should be absolutely awesome this season. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of Hawks games. Allen Iverson and Tim Duncan, what a pairing, what a duo, and then Chauncey Billups um, as well. He's a good player. And then Steve Kerr coming off the bench, that's fun. The Jazz finally feel like they're doing something. You know, they haven't made the playoffs since '95, and yeah, as you see here, they started off the decade winning 59 games, got the 1 seed, but couldn't really make any deep playoff runs in the early '90s. Then Tom Chambers left, Michael Adams. The team really started to, the wheels started to come off on for the franchise in the late '90s, and then they started to rebuild. Team now consists of Steve Francis, Eldridge Kazner, Harold Miner, Anton Jameson, Lorenzen Wright, Jason Williams, Jay Edwards, Nate McMillan, Stacey King, Calbert Cheney, Randy Brown, Robert Tractor Trailer, Garbage, Garbarhoza, Trajan Langdon. So I don't think they're playoff ready. I don't think they're anywhere close to that, but I do think this team should be worth watching at least towards the beginning of the season. Franchise and Anton Jameson. That's an interesting pairing. So this is Steve Francis, the franchise point guard for the Utah Jazz. We'll see how things look with him as the floor general. So I'm really excited to seeing this Jazz team finally starting to make some noise. Can they do that? Can they make some noise as a franchise with Francis and Anton Jameson? That is the question. And we'll see. I think they could be an interesting 2000s team. Now it's time to look at the Sacramento Kings. Checking out what they did in the 90s. First and foremost, I mean, one thing to note is that they haven't missed the playoffs in quite some time. I think the last year they missed it was 1987, which is funny to think because in real life they only had a small period where they did make the playoffs until recently. So yeah, but ever since missing the playoffs in 87, they won 41 games, 56, 48, 52, 48, 53, 54, 58, 49, 54 and 28, 97. This is the year that they made the finals. I think they made the conference finals here and here as well. This is when they had Charles Barkley. So where are they at now? What does the roster look like now? B.J. Armstrong's still here. They have Reggie Lewis now, Clarence Weatherspoon, Sam Perkins, old Sam Perkins, 38 years old. He's starting for the team. You got Arvydas Sabonis. I don't know if I love this front court. I don't really love this front court at all. Obviously, Sabonis is good, but you kind of need a stronger defender at the 4 spot. So this might be something that I try to fix halfway through the season. We'll see how badly the Kings start, but I'm nervous about this front court. I don't think that's going to really play well for 2K. This team definitely capable of making the playoffs, but yeah, I feel like they're missing a piece here. This feels like this roster isn't quite isn't quite right. But they have Reggie Lewis and B.J. Armstrong. That's a fun backcourt, and of course, a bonus has been playing like an MVP these last few seasons. So moving on to the New York Knicks, they were the 1 seed last year. They lost in the second round to the 76ers. Generally speaking, though, the 90s were pretty good for the Knicks. They never made the finals, though. So in real life, the Knicks did better. You'd have to say they did better than they did in 2K. Even though in 2K they won 50, 53, 54, 51, 47, 53, 2 years in a row, 46 wins, and then 54 and 55. They never were able to put a squad together that could really go against the Bulls, right? And then last year they lost to the 76ers. But this team, I mean, the team is pretty much the same. Mark Jackson, John Starks, Latrell Sprewell, Anthony Mason, Patrick Ewing, Charlie Ward, Charles Oakley, J.R. Reed, Kevin Edwards, Ed Horton, Walt Williams. If they're disappointing this year, if they go out in the first round, it might be time to make some changes with this roster. But for now, and I know John Starks is a bit overrated. I might fix these overalls. I don't know. But yeah, for now, this is the Knicks squad. We'll see if any adjustments need to be made over the course of the season. And then the Lakers, they won the championship last year, won their 11th championship. 1999. We'll just check out the rosters, check out the new uniforms as well. So we got Kenny the Jet Smith coming back, Kobe Bryant, Glenn Rice. Glenn Rice is now on the Lakers, no longer on the Hornets, and you'll see why shortly. Robert Horry, Shaquille O'Neal, Derek Coleman coming off the bench, Rick Fox, Aaron McKee, Gary Trent, Derek Fisher, Frankie King, Shackleford, Mark Randall, Eric Williams. The 90s were a bit of a roller coaster for them. They started out making it to the finals in 1990, right? They lost the 7 games to the Pistons. Then they won the championship in 91 against the Bulls. Then they were kicking around here, making the playoffs, kind of a little bit disappointing. And then finally, Magic Johnson retires after this season, the 98 season. They bring in Shaq, win 59 games, and win the championship. So the Lakers are back. Lakers are back. Kobe and Shaq era is more than underway. They are cooking. And as we see, this is the Staples Center court. This is the Lakers at the Staples Center. They have arrived. They are here. Really exciting to see them at this court. The very arena that they are at today. So, yeah, this is pretty freaking exciting, guys. I mean, holy shit, we're here. We're gonna be jumping into a lot of Lakers games, I hope, over the course of the regular season. Mavericks, would you say they had a roller coaster like season or decade, I should say? Well, they won 64 games to start off the 90s, and I think they lost in the conference finals. This is back in the Barkley era. But the Grant Hill era, it's been a mixed bag. They win 41 games here and here. They win 50 games here, but I don't think they got very far in the playoffs that season. And then the things fell apart last season for them, winning 35 games. And then you gotta wonder: is Grant Hill gonna want to stick around with a team that's not doing too great? Mark Price is the point guard this season. 35-year-old Mark Price. You got Jerry Stackhouse, who they signed in free agency. He left the Pistons to join Grant Hill and Larry Johnson. Grant Hill, of course, is back. Larry Johnson's still here. Sean Bradley, Tim Legler is now on the team. Wesley Person, Tony Delk, Will Perdue, Matt Bullard, Chris Dudley, Shamsid Dean, Marcus Liberty, Todd Fuller. So yeah, this is the team. I think with Jerry Stackhouse, that should definitely add an interesting element. And Mark Price and Grant Hill both being playmakers. Mark Price being a good shooter. I think this could be an interesting dynamic. Price and Grant Hill, and then Jerry Stackhouse as the starting 2 guard. Yeah, I think they could definitely make the playoffs, get back in there. But are they gonna be able to keep Grant Hill happy? That is going to be the storyline for the Mavericks over the course of the season. We'll see what happens with the Mavericks. Let's move on to the Nets. Let's just check out the roster first. Steve Nash, Rashawn Leonard, now on the team. Chris Mullen and Tony McDyess. Sadrunas Ilgauskas. Got Joe Dumars coming off the bench. He's finally no longer a Maverick. Had to do that because of the Stackhouse signing. Irvin Johnson is on the team as well. Vernon Maxwell. Sean Marion coming off the bench as a rookie, number 1 pick. You got Roy Hinton here, still kicking it. Jeff McInnes, Ricky Berry, Stanley Roberts, James Posey. So, yeah, they got rid of Sabalos and Stacey Ogman. Decided to get rid of them before their value plummets, and then they got a younger guard in Vashawn Leonard. And then Chris Millen's only here as a stopgap. By next season, I expect Sean Marion to be the starter at that small forward position. But for now, this is the starting 5, and it'll be fun to see Sean Marion progress from year 1 to year 2. That's the team. If you check out what they did in the 90s, so they had Tim Hardaway. They drafted Tim Hardaway somewhere around here. We're barely missing the playoffs. Then they made it this year, 93, 48 wins. Then they kind of fell off. Then they traded Tim Hardaway, I think, after this season. Drafted Steve Nash. And then these couple of years here, they had some pretty successful years. In 98, they made it to round 2. Then they fell off a little bit in the 99 season. Fell off a little bit. But I think the thing is with the Nets, it's about Sean Marion's development, and it's about Steve Nash's development as well. So I kind of look at it as a building block year. But when Sean Marion gets up to speed, that's when I expect this team to really start to ascend. So we'll keep an eye on that. And let's check out the Nuggets. So in the 90s, the Nuggets started off pretty not too great. 35 wins, 32 wins, but they were drafting some good players around this time. Kevin Mutombo, Mookie Blaylock, Dan Marley, etc. And then once they made the playoffs in 94, they did not look back. They've made the playoffs every year since. But there's some changes. There have been some changes with this roster just a little bit. So Mookie Blaylock is back. But you have Steve Smith now, Chris Morris, Christian Laettner, Kevin Mutombo. So I guess the only real change is Steve Smith is now the starting 2 guard, and Dan Marley has been shipped off. Scott Skiles is here, Bo Kimball, Reggie Williams. The big weakness with the Nuggets, their bench leaves a lot to be desired. It's not a great bench at all. So if they make the playoffs, it's off the strength of their starters. They're going to have to play heavy minutes unless they're able to fill out their bench somehow. But they have a lot of money tied to these guys, so it's going to be hard to do that. That's the Nuggets. Moving on to the Pacers, who I think they have a new court. I want to make sure I check that out before we move on. Michael Williams is back. He's a 94 overall. I decided to keep him on for another year. His progression, the player progressions, a lot of the players who I thought should start regressing actually did regress. Michael Williams wasn't one of those players, but I think after this year, I think I will tinker with Michael Williams because he's 33 years old and 94 overall, and I just don't really understand it. Michael Finley is a 2 guard. Derek McKee is now here instead of. They lost Mitch Richmond and they signed Derek McKee. That's pretty much what happened here. Karl Malone, Eric Dampier, Carlos Rogers, Anthony Cook, Kirk Lee, Scott Brooks, Willie Anderson, Kevin Brooks, John Turner, Xavier McDaniel, and Keith Kloss. I don't know if this team will set the world on fire, but they have a really solid squad, and they certainly could make the playoffs. They've been making the playoffs every year since 92, as you see here. They had a couple of subpar seasons to begin the 90s. But ever since 92, they have made the playoffs every year. Usually making it to the second round. They made it to the conference finals in 92. They lost in round 1 last year because they were the 8th seed. But still a really solid team. Karl Malone is still a really good player. Not retiring anytime soon, most likely. And they got Michael Finley and Derek McKee and Eric Dampier. So, yeah, this team is should still be a really solid playoff caliber team. Now let's check if their court is a little bit different. I'm pretty sure it is. I'm pretty sure 2K updated this court. Yes, it definitely feels like they made some changes to this court. So yeah, this is what it looks like now. Lots of fun. I'm sure we'll be jumping into plenty of Pacers games throughout the season. And let's move on. Move on to the Pistons, who I feel like should do something this year. I certainly don't expect them to be terrible again. I hope not anyway. Let's check out the roster first. Baron Davis, Stacey Augmon, and Cedric Ceballos are now on the Pistons. And you got Kevin Garnett, Brad Miller, Hersey Hawkins, Lindsey Hunter, Jim McIlvain, Richard Dumas, Chris Mills, Kevin Ollie, Tito Horford, Robert Grant, Spud Webb. I like this team. I like this team. Maybe they're a bit too young. Baron Davis is a rookie, and he's the starting point guard. Maybe that could be a difficult challenge for Baron Davis to kind of lead this team as the floor general. But I mean, he's a dynamic player, and I expect big things from him. Um, yeah, they won the championship in 1990, and then made it. They think they lost in the first round actually in '91. After that, after a couple of playoff appearances, they started to really fall off after '94. Embarked on a rebuild, and they just really haven't. Despite having Kevin Garnett, this team really hasn't uh, de- showed up on the court. Right? They really haven't had much luck as far as getting a lot of wins in the regular season, as far as becoming a playoff team. But I definitely think this year it definitely feels like they have what it takes to make the playoffs. They definitely have a good squad. And Kevin Garnett, 95 overall, he's like an MVP caliber player at this point. So I expect big things from this team. No doubt about that. Moving on to the Rockets. Very interesting squad here. Rod Strickland, Clyde Drexler, Scottie Pippen, Charles Barkley, Hakeem Olajuwon, Robert Pack, Doug Overton, New Bill, McLeod. Bench, not too great at all. But you know what? I pretty much expect this to be the last year of Olajuwon, Barkley, and Clyde Drexler. So I decided to add Scottie Pippen to the mix to see if he can get this team back into playoff prominence. I certainly think this team could be a lot of fun on the court. I definitely think they can make the playoffs with this squad, but a lot of old players here, right? 37 years old, 34, 36, 36. So it's a very old team. Even Rod Strickland's pretty old. That's pretty much why we were able to put together this. This team looks kind of ridiculous on paper, but it's a bunch of old guys, and that pretty much the real life Rockets were kind of like that around this time, although Drexler was already retired at this point. But yeah, they have a bit of a I would call it a big three. Probably Drexler really isn't really a all-star player anymore. Rod Strickland is kind of never really been an all-star player. But yeah, they needed to add Scottie Pippen after the big disappointing year they had last year. Ever since they won the, let's go back. So they had some solid seasons here. Then won the finals, won the championship in '94. Had a couple of other strong seasons to follow that. I think they made the finals in '95, '96, lost to the Bulls both times. And then '98 season they started to fall off, and they really fell off last year. So I'm hoping that Pippen can add some stability and get this team back into the playoff mix. But is this team simply too old? Is it time to break them up? Break up these guys? Maybe it is. We will find out over the course of this season. Checking out the Spurs, Tim Hardaway, Doug Christie, Len Bias is now on the Spurs. Dennis Rodman, David Robinson. We got Bedford, you got Winder, Del Negro. The bench isn't that great, not too great, but hell of a starting five here. I mean, good lord. You had some scoring and Len Bias. Rodman's back. He is 38 years old, but he's still a hell of a player, right? He's probably going to retire this year. Is my gut feeling. David Robinson probably has a few more years left to contribute. Len Bias is 35. It's a very old team. It's an old team, kind of like the Rockets, but this is a really talented team. They should still at least make the conference finals. I definitely think they can give the Lakers a run for their money. They have a really strong squad, but maybe they're just too old. But I'm hoping they're good. I'm hoping that they can really put together a really good season. If you check out the '90s overall for the Spurs, a bit of a disappointment. It's us looking at David Robinson's tenure for the Spurs. 45 wins. They never really did better than 51 wins until last year, right? Adding Dennis Rodman to the mix helped them win 56 games, but they lost in round two to the Sonics in the playoffs. So yeah, I mean that was the reason to add Len Bias to this team. See if he can provide enough scoring to really get them over the hump, make the conference finals, maybe even make the finals. The Suns. The Suns are they're really they quietly had a decent season last year. Quietly decent. Um, they've made the playoffs every year since what 92, right? They made the finals in 92, in 93, and then they had some really solid years here. They've fallen off a little bit. Had a quiet 45 win season last year. Uh, but this team could still make the playoffs. They certainly have that capability. Sam Cassell, Blue Edwards, Sean Elliott, Randy White, Theo Ratliff, Tony Dumas, Antonio Daniels, Crozier, Chucky Atkins, Rafe LaFrance, Vincent Askew, Gary Grant, Raja Bell. Raja Bell, I guess he was part of a trade that saw him go to the Suns. He was drafted by the Sonics, but now he's on the Suns. So, interesting team. As long as they have Sean Elliott and Theo Ratliff and Sam Cassell, I think they can still make the playoffs. But they are kind of like stuck in, they probably won't do better than a 4 or 5 seed at this point. Maybe it's time for a change down the road, but I think for now, I think they're happy with where they're at. We'll see. That's the Suns. Moving on to the Sonics. They had a hell of a season last year, making it to the conference finals. They made a few changes. So Abdul Rauf is here. Nick Anderson has replaced Drazen Petrovic, who was on the Sonics for a long, long time. Bruce Bowen, Sean Kemp, Rick Smits, Doug West, Sharon Wright, Doug Smith, Corey Alexander, Tony Massenberg, Dennis Hobson. Should be a good squad. They should be really good this year. If you check out what they did in the '90s, I mean they were when we started this sim in the '80s. It was really frustrating to see the Sonics continue to be bad. Just no matter what I did, it seems like they were always bad to start off. I mean, this is what it looked like. This was the Sonics in the '80s. But then they drafted Sean Kemp, and ever since then, they get Abdul Rauf, I think the year after that, and they make the playoffs pretty much every year during this period. Then they made the finals in '98. Win 45 games last year, made the conference finals in '99. I think they should probably be as good as that, if not better this year. Now that they have Nick Anderson there, I feel like he's going to provide some nice perimeter defense, maybe have a nice balance in the backcourt as far as defense and scoring is concerned. So I definitely think this team could be really good. Bruce Bowen also is a hell of a defender, a 3 and D player. So yeah, I expect this team to make the playoffs and be pretty solid. You know, Trailblazers. Let's check out what they've done in the '90s. So in '89, they win the championship, make the playoffs the next couple of years, and Clyde Drexler leaves to go to the Rockets in around this period. Then they have a long rebuild, and now where are they at? I think they could be pretty damn good this year. I think they finally have the squad. Damon Stoudemire, Kendall Gill, who they got in a trade with the Hornets, Sharif Abdul-Rahim, Rasheed Wallace, who they signed in free agency. The Hornets had to let him go for reasons you will soon find out. Matt Geiger, Terry Catledge, Mario Ellie, Eric Murdoch, Rip Hamilton, who they drafted, Tony Batty, Todd Lichty, Hot Rod Williams, etc. Devian George is here. Devin George. I think this team can make the playoffs. I think they definitely have the capability to do that. I think it's time. I think it's time for the Blazers. I think it's time for the Blazers to get back into the playoff mix. I think this is the year they do that. So I'm looking forward to that. Warriors. They've made the playoffs the last couple of years. So check out the roster Not many changes. Jason Kidd, Allen Houston, Isaiah Ryder, Horace Grant, Juwan Howard, Brent Barry, Jeff Sanders, Steve, Othello Harrington. The bench isn't that great, but they have a hell of a starting five, and they've been a pretty solid team these last few seasons during the Jason Kidd era. So they kind of struggled in the early 90s as the Len Bias era came to a close. And then they drafted Jason Kidd around here. And ever since that, they've been a perennial playoff team. They signed Allen Houston at some point. They also drafted Juwan Howard when they drafted Jason Kidd. So they haven't really gotten past the ceiling so far. Has been 48 wins. We'll see if they can take another leap, another step forward from that. But if they don't, maybe next offseason is the time to really see if we can make this team even better than what they are. I mean, Horace Grant is 34, so eventually they'll have to replace him at some point, right? He's a free agent after this year. So, yeah. This team, with Jason Kidd, as long as Jason Kidd is here, they'll be a playoff team. The question will be, can they get to that next level? Can they make the conference finals? Can they make the finals? And how can they do that? Do they have the players to do that now, or do they need to make some changes? Checking out the Heat now, who I know for a fact changed their court. This is their starting five now. Gary Payton, Drazen Petrovic. 35-year-old Drazen Petrovic is now on the Heat, which I think is pretty fun. Clifford Robinson, P.J. Brown, Alonzo Mourning, David Wesley, Dave Johnson, Gerald Wilkins, Kenny Thomas, Chris Crawford. Their bench isn't all that great, but it's a hell of a starting five. I really like this starting five a lot. But let's check them out in their records in the 90s to see what they did in the 90s. So obviously their first year was the 89 season, and then toiled in mediocrity until here. Made the playoffs in 94, and then huge leap here. 61 wins, 59 wins, 61 wins, 48 wins, 52 wins. This team has been really good ever since the 95 season. Having Alonzo Mourning and Gary Payton's going to do that for you. But one knock against this team is that other than the 97 season, they've haven't been able to get past the first round. So they make the conference finals in 97, but other than that, they've lost in the first round every other year, despite being a 2 seed and 3 seed sometimes. So they need to fix that. I don't know what's going on with them. They need to figure that out. Maybe Drazen Petrovic is the secret sauce. I don't know, but they need to figure something out because that is a little embarrassing. But yeah, this new court. I mean, this court is pretty awesome. I gotta say that. Gotta love it, right? I mean, yeah, this feels good. I like it. You got the giant Heat logo in the middle here. They got the new uniforms, which I think is pretty close to what their uniforms are now. So yeah, the Heat are looking like they've adapted to the 21st century and looks like the team that we know and love today or hate today. However, I don't know how you feel about the Heat. The Charlotte Hornets, guys. Are you ready for this? No, seriously, are you ready for this? Are you guys ready? What did I do? What did I do? Before I get into all that. 90s were disappointing for the Hornets. They do make the playoffs here in 94, won 42 games. But after that, they've been flirting with making the playoffs here and there, 97, 99, but they just barely missed it. And Hornets management and ownership decided that a change was needed. There's rumors the Hornets might move to New Orleans in a couple of years. Those rumors are kind of creeping in. So they decided a big change was needed for the Hornets. And you know what that big change was? Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is now on the Charlotte Hornets, folks. And he is playing alongside Eric Snow, Rodney Rogers, Terry Mills, Brad Doherty, Rashard Lewis coming off the bench, John Barry, Judd Buechler, Charles Smith, Scott Pollard, Greg Anthony, Churchwell, and yada, yada, yada. But Michael Jordan, folks. Michael Jordan now on the Hornets. Let's just check it out. It's a Hornet playing on this court. Oh, we are definitely going to be jumping into a lot of Hornets games. Yes, yes, sir. Yes, we will. Oh my God, this is going to be so much fun. And I thought it was interesting to have him play with a team of young players and then some veterans like Terry Mills. Brad Doherty's already on the squad. And with Michael Jordan on the team, they could definitely make a deep playoff run. So I'm very interested in seeing what that team could do in 2000. I think they're finally. It'd be a shocker if they barely missed the playoffs this year. I think they're going to do a bit better than that. Maybe they can make the finals. I don't know. But that's the Hornets. That's very exciting. Let's move on. Magic. I'm not as excited about this team. Some changes will need to be made if they can't get it going this year. But we'll see. Khaled Reeves, Kerry Kittle, Jamal Mashburn, Vin Baker, Kurt Thomas, Lorenzo Charles, Elmore Spencer, God Shamgod, Scott Burrell, Randy Woods, Al Harrington, Ed Gray, Lance Blanks, Andre Karolinko. So, yeah, I like Vin Baker on this. I think this team could potentially be good, but I always feel that way, and they always let me down. Here, they've sucked all throughout the '90s. They have sucked. Their peak was winning 33 games. No, their peak was in '98. Actually, they won 38 games in '98. This was like their peak. This is them at their best. 32 wins, 33 wins, 38 wins, and then they fell off a bit in the '99 season. And yeah, much like the Hornets getting Michael Jordan. If I'm gonna say it right now, if maybe they get Grant Hill and Tracy McGrady if things don't work out for McGrady and Hill in their respective spots. So I really do. I really want to see something happen with the Magic. I hate seeing them just be bad for a whole decade. I tried little things here and there to make them better. I think we need a big change. I think we need to make some big moves next offseason if they can't make the playoffs this season. So that's the Magic. Timberwolves, it hasn't been much better for them either. I mean, they were really bad in the beginning. Uh, their peak was in '98 when they won 33 games. But they've made some moves. I think they can be really damn good this year. I think they can make the playoffs this year. Stephon Marbury, Ron Harper, Brian Russell, Antoine Walker, Antonio Davis, Jermaine O'Neal coming off the bench, Del Curry, Ron Artest, of course, who they drafted, Chris Carr, Bobby Jackson, Johnny Taylor, etc., etc. So this team, their bench is really solid. I mean, there's some young players who aren't proven yet, but I expect Ron Artest to eventually be a starter for them. Jermaine O'Neal as well. And then they got Stephon Marbury, who was a Timberwolf in real life. And they did a trade with the Grizzlies. They got rid of some guys who I think could make the Grizzlies better. But I thought getting a dynamic point guard, a young dynamic point guard, only 22 years old, um, pairing him with a defensive-minded guard and Ron Harper, who had some success being a two-guard in Detroit. You got Brian Russell, who's also a great defender. So you got defense, you got scoring. This team has to be good. Come on. This team has to be good in the year 2000. That is my hope. Moving on to the last two teams, finally, the Raptors. I think this team could be pretty damn good, too. Chris Childs, Dan Marley, Trace McGrady, Joe Smith, Ben Wallace, Kevin Duckworth, Danielle Marshall, Bobby Phills, James Worthy, Mike Bibby, Jason Terry, Jamie Watson, Doliak. Yeah, Jason Terry and Mike Bibby I eventually see becoming the new backcourt, but for now they got Chris Childs, Marley, got some veterans in those spots. Trace McGrady, we'll see if he enjoys his time as I guess he has a team option after this year, doesn't he? I was thinking he was a free agent after this season. Maybe he's a free agent after next season. But yeah, we'll see how this team clicks. We'll see if this team is any good this year. Let's check out what they've done these last couple of seasons. 24 wins, 23 wins, 19 wins. Then a big leap here, 35 wins, and they could certainly make an even bigger leap, make the playoffs this year, but it remains to be seen if that can happen. So they definitely have a good roster. Trace McGrady is a star already, right? His numbers, well, not too great yet, but certainly he'll make a big leap scoring wise and continue to be impressive and whatnot. So I definitely expect a lot of big things for this team in the 2000 season. So we'll see if that actually happens. The Grizzlies. So they made that Stephon Marbury trade, and this is what the team looks like now. Jason Williams, Vince Carter, Jalen Rose, Keith Van Horn, Olden Polynice, Tyrone Hill, AC Green, Lionel Simmons, Terrence Frencher, Ramil Robinson, Elton Brand, Anthony Parker, Jaren Jackson, and that's pretty much all the ones that you need to know. This team looks pretty damn solid. I don't know if they're a playoff team this year, but I think they are on the right track. And I think as long as some of these players progress like they should, especially Elton Brand eventually, this team should be pretty damn good. The only thing is that they'll probably be in Memphis when the team actually starts making the playoffs because the Grizzlies are going to move after the 2001 season. So, yeah, there's no saving that because there's no way they're going to be good enough to stay in Vancouver. So, I can't lie to you. I'm not going to keep them in Vancouver because I kind of liked them in Memphis. I like the Vancouver Grizzlies. I have some nostalgia for the Vancouver Grizzlies, but I'm kind of looking forward to the Memphis Grizzlies. I'm ready for that. And Vince Carter in Memphis should be a lot of fun. Yeah, they haven't really done much since they became a franchise, but I expect them to have their best season yet in the year 2000. We'll see if we'll see what that means. Maybe that's 35 wins. Maybe that's 40 wins. Maybe they can surprise and make the playoffs. I don't think so, but I think they should be a much more exciting team than they've been in years past. So I am looking forward to seeing that, and that is pretty much it for the 2000 rosters. I don't think there's anything else you need to see. You saw all the new courts. You saw where everyone is at. Got a lot of exciting games to look forward to opening weekend. So let's check this out. You got opening weekend games: Wizards, Knicks, Pistons, Warriors, Nets, Celtics, Mavericks, Lakers, Nuggets, Heat, Rockets, Jazz. I mean, which of these games wouldn't be worth seeing? I mean, the Wizards are going to be bad, but other than that, I mean, Kevin Garnett versus Jason Kidd. You got Steve Nash versus Ray Allen and Paul Pierce. You got Shaq and Kobe versus Grant Hill and Jerry Stackhouse. You got Dikembe Mutombo and Mookie Blaylock versus Gary Payton and Alonzo Mourning. You got Steve Francis and Anton Jameson versus the old guys, Pippen, Barkley, Olajuwon. I mean, every game has very intriguing matchups this season, I would think. Aside from the Bulls and the Wizards, pretty much everybody else has an interesting team that's going to be worth watching. So I'm excited about that. Very, very excited with the 2000 season. Can't wait for you to get into it with you guys. Thank you very much for watching. I am Nutty Sports Gamer. Like and subscribe, and I will catch you next time.